Well, we're past the Battle of Antietam. September 17th, 1862. And the bloodiest day ever in the Western Hemisphere. Um, North America, South America, there's never been a bloodier day than Antietam. And Antietam was a result, really, the large casualty list at Antietam, unprecedented casualty list at Antietam. And by the way, a list that has never been topped for a single day. Um, that comes about really because of incompetence, and it's going to have some effects. It's going to force people to do some things which probably in the long run did not work out. So, anyway, so let's just take a look at this. McClellan and Lee. George B. McClellan for the North and Robert E. Lee, of course, the great Southern commander. Neither one of them is going to have a very good day, and you can argue as to who had the worst day on this one. First off, Robert E. Lee should never have fought this battle. He had about 44,000 troops, and he takes a good defensive ground, but there's only one way off that battlefield if he should get in trouble, and it's rather easily blocked if he should have to make a run for it. George B. McClellan has at least 65,000 troops on the battlefield itself. He has probably another 25,000 troops close at hand. So he outnumbers Lee more than 2 to 1. And he's got a way to keep Lee from escaping if he can use those numbers to get control of the battle. So this is a terrible mistake by Lee to stop in this battlefield position, which is on the banks of the Antietam Creek in western Maryland. Similarly, McClellan, he's got it all. I mean, he can hit Lee with everything but the kitchen sink if he wants to. And as I say, he has an easy route to cut Lee's retreat off. So McClellan should have, if not destroyed Lee's army, made it completely impossible to use again, and probably should have captured Lee and Stonewall Jackson and those people. That's not going to happen. If it can be said that in a battle that both sides lost, I think that's probably what happened here. Something else too. When Robert E. Lee went north into Maryland from Virginia, he was heading for Harrisburg. Had he made Harrisburg, probably the French and the British would have intervened in some way, shape, or form to stop the American Civil War. By standing for battle at Antietam, at this it's actually a fairly small battlefield. It's called a small lens, which means it's not very wide. By stopping at Antietam, Lee threw away the chance to go back over the Potomac, put a big river between himself and McClellan, and began to maneuver again. So he took away his ability to essentially affect the war, maybe bring the British and French in on the side of the South. So this was a disaster. Lee, from a strategic point of view, achieved absolutely nothing. McClellan, from a tactical point of view, not only achieved nothing, if anything, he came awfully close to destroying a good chunk of the Union Army. So this is truly a battle, as I say, in which nobody won and everybody lost. And just to give you an example, one of the things about battles, or war for that matter, is sometimes you have to lose a lot of casualties right up front because you want the war to end. If you can stop a war or a battle before it gets well underway, then you save lives. You may lose a lot of lives or a lot of people up front and at the very beginning, but if you're going to war or you're going into a battle, go in it to win it, for goodness sakes. And so McClellan, who basically just wanted to protect Washington from Lee, and there was no chance that Lee was going to descend upon Washington. But by fighting essentially for a draw, McClellan, who fights this battle sporadically, it actually turns out to be 3 battles. That is a battle in the north, a battle in the center, and a battle in the south, part of the battlefield. And one battle begins after another ends. By fighting sporadically, McClellan allowed Lee to shift his few troops from place to place. And that ran up the casualty figure because McClellan was always facing more troops than he should have been facing. And of course, that means that, Lee could kill. Lee's troops could kill more Northern troops than they could have if they had had to fight in all different directions at the same time. So this is really a disaster, and there's just no getting around it. The end result, therefore, of course, is that after a day's fighting on September 17th, 1862, Lee actually holds his lines on September 18th, 1862, which makes no sense whatsoever. His army had been shot to pieces by this time, but he felt that McClellan would attack him and maybe he could get some kind of opportunity. And you know what? McClellan didn't attack him. And Lincoln's not happy. Okay, as President of the United States, Lincoln is McClellan's boss. And, so essentially, Lincoln's wondering why the heck McClellan didn't do more things. And so as a result, he's going to ask McClellan, why didn't you do so? At one point, Lincoln says to McClellan, if you're not doing anything with the army, I'd like to borrow it for a while. In another instance, Lee, despite the fact that his army was shot up, dispatched his cavalry, and they raided through Maryland up into Pennsylvania, went as far north as Chambersburg, held up banks, created chaos, destroyed things, and Lincoln says to McClellan, why didn't you do something about this? And McClellan says, well, my horses are tired. And Lincoln responds, please tell me what your horses have done that would make anything tired. So it's pretty clear. McClellan was a good organizer. He was an excellent trainer of troops. He was a great engineer. He was one of the best engineers in the country at that time. And as I've said, he was a good organizer. He could organize almost anything. He just couldn't fight. Lee was an engineer, and Lee could fight. And Lincoln, of course, Battle of Antietam is on September 17th, as I've said. And on November 7th, 1862, Lincoln fires McClellan, which he dang well should have. McClellan cost, I don't know how many soldiers their lives. The thing with if you have an incompetent plumber, your house gets wet. If you have an incompetent general, a field gets wet with blood. You should have fired McClellan before this. Trouble is Lincoln, Lincoln was not a military guy, although he's going to learn a fair amount about military things. If you fire McClellan, who do you put in his place? Lincoln had several really good generals. Joseph Hooker. Hooker was probably his best military mind, although Hooker had several personal issues, which may have made him not your first pick to command an army. George Gordon Meade, certainly a very competent guy, but not exactly somebody who had a high profile, and I doubt that Lincoln seriously considered him to replace McClellan. But there was a general who'd been a politician who was a little bit on the flamboyant side, but he was the opposite of McClellan. He was aggressive, and he was active. And after McClellan that's what you wanted, was an aggressive, active general. And so Lincoln picks a guy by the name of Ambrose Burnside because he's active and aggressive, and to some degree he can organize well. Burnside, though, was not, in any sense of the word, a professional military guy. He got his rank, his position, because he was a politician, important politician from Rhode Island. Burnside, when told that he was going to become the new commanding general, Burnside told Lincoln quite bluntly that he was not fit for high command like that. And Lincoln basically said, "Who else am I going to pick?" And so McClellan is going to take over. Now Burnside is going to take over. Burnside, to his credit, is going to think very aggressively, because Lee's got an interesting situation, and that is that his army has been shot to pieces. Once Lee retreated to the south side of the Potomac River, he has to refit his army. He has to get ready to fight again. He has to reorganize it. He has to get new troops. He has to fit those troops in. He has to rest the troops he has. And of course, hopefully some of your wounded are going to be coming back. The South has trouble feeding its army, and particularly in feeding its horses. So Lee is going to spread out his army. Longstreet and Lee will be in what's called the Shenandoah Valley, and on the other side of the Shenandoah Valley, Jackson will be sitting. And they spread their army out like that so they can get enough fodder to feed their horses. Well, Burnside in the North has no trouble supplying its armies. And so Burnside is going to realize that Lee's got a problem here, which is he can feed his army. Lee can't. And that's going to give him a great advantage in terms of not just having satisfied troops and fat horses, but that Ambrose Burnside is going to be sitting there and he's going to be looking at the map, and he's going to see the advantage that he has simply because he can feed his army where it is. And Lee has to spread his army out and also, of course, rest his army. And so Burnside, again to his credit, realizes that, well, here's the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Shenandoah Mountains. And Lee is spread out here. Jackson's over here. Jackson's there. And, you've got troops that are spread out all over the map for Lee. Burnside can keep his troops in one place, and he can move them as one piece. So all he has to do is go past Lee. There's nothing between Burnside and Richmond. There are no Southern troops there. So Burnside moves like this, like he's going to come down and try to cut Lee off from Richmond. So he starts in this direction, which of course makes Lee acutely aware that he could be pinned over here in what's called the Shenandoah Valley. And then Burnside heads for Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg is right above Richmond. And if you go, if you can get across the Rappahannock River, and there's no troops in front of you, there's nothing between you and Richmond except open air. Lee will never catch you if you can get down that far. So Lee heads in this, so Burnside comes down like this and heads for Fredericksburg. Oh, in front of Fredericksburg, there's something called the Rappahannock River. Rappahannock River is, at that point, is a great big river. I believe it's almost a mile wide at that point, and it's fairly deep. And you know, have bridges to get across there. Well, in the Army, of course, they use pontoon bridges, floating bridges, basically. And Burnside, good organizer that he is, orders the pontoon bridges to be at Fredericksburg for him to come down and use them. Hey, it's a military bureaucracy. They don't get around to getting the bridges there. By the time the bridges get there, Lee, Longstreet, Jackson, and Lee's cavalry commander, Jeb Stuart, are sitting on the other side of the river, hoping and praying that something is going to come that way. Now, Burnside's aggressive and he's active. But for reasons which escape anybody's understanding, Burnside doesn't maneuver, doesn't say, darn, the pontoon boats arrive in time, I'll come up with another plan. Instead, he sticks to the plan he already has, which is to cross a river that's almost a mile wide with Lee's army sitting on the other side of it, shooting at you. And there's hills and swamps on the other side of that river. So you're going to have to cross the river, get through the town, go and then go up either a hill or go through a swamp, which happened to have some of the best fighters in the world in it. This is not a good idea. This is a very, very, very bad idea. But that's what's going to happen. And as a result, of course, as I'll cover in the next video, you know, you're talking about a real first-class disaster. One of the worst days the American Army is, not the Confederate Army, but one of the worst days the U.S., the Northern Army, is ever going to have. And when we talk about a disaster, I mean, we are really talking about a first-class disaster here. One of the worst of all times. And it's going to end up in the Senate of the United States, joined by members of the cabinet, thinking of ways to kind of, sort of do a soft coup, leave Lincoln with the title of the president and take away his ability to do anything because, frankly, this is frank incompetence. Anyway, everybody out there, take care. And I'll see you in the next video. Okay. So good luck. And, you know,